Hello everyone, this is John Ward of the Appalachian Channel and welcome to LaFollette, Tennessee. This is my hometown where I grew up as a kid. I would ride my bicycle down here. I lived only a couple blocks up the road, and it was different when in the 70s as a kid. This town was full of people, and I would come down here on my bicycle and go downtown to eat at King's Cafe. But I'm here today to tell you about Frankie Bacon. She works in the building right here that you see behind me, the Fleet building. She works at State Farm Insurance. She's 95 years old, will be 96, I think she said, this coming October. And we're gonna go in and talk to her about growing up here in the 20s and 30s during the Depression, and how back then, people even on these small little city lots had livestock. They would have a cow, and the cows would run loose here in town. They would just let them roam free. They would free graze in town. That was really something. The lot was like a 50 by 150 lot. They had two of those, and they actually had a farm and provided for themselves on that small lot. Let's go in and let's meet Frankie Bacon. So I'm here with Frankie Bacon, and met her in person yesterday. And you've been here for working for how long?
58 years.
58 years here at State Farm. So you were born right here up the road there in LaFollette, and lived here most of all your life in this same town?
I lived in Michigan a little while, but right when I was first married, that wasn't for me. I
Yeah.
come back home.
Come back to Tennessee. Yeah. A lot of people.
Glad I did.
Yeah, so a lot of people moved up north back then to work because there's more work up there.
That's right.
Then little by little, they kind of moved back
Ohio,
home.
Michigan, yeah.
So we was talking about yesterday that you're what, 95 years old?
I'll be 96 in October.
96, and you still come to work every day and drive yourself here?
Yes.
Yeah? Never thought about retiring?
Well, no, I like right here, and I'm alone at home, and I work with the finest people that lives. And what's a better place than somewhere you're happy? Call it work, call it whatever you want to. When you retire, you're supposed to settle where you're happiest, and I'm happiest right here. So does that make sense?
Well, yeah. You
Okay.
enjoy talking to people, I believe, don't you?
Oh, I love people. Oh, I love people.
Yeah. You do a good job, I'm sure, taking care of the customers, talking to them.
Oh,
and
now I don't know about that. But anyway, I do my best.
Well, I was here yesterday, and it seemed like you was getting a few phone calls and helping a few people with things. So,
Hopefully.
hopefully. So, yeah, we was talking yesterday about when you was a kid, how that here in LaFollette, and I grew up right here up the street on 9th Street as a kid, and
Oh, okay.
and back then you really couldn't even let your dog run loose back in the 70s.
But that was a long time after I was a kid.
Yeah.
See, I was a kid back in the 30s.
Well, yeah,
The
but
late 20s and the 30s.
so, but you was telling me about how that people had livestock right here in town,
Oh, yeah.
and
Oh,
that
yeah.
was something to me.
You know, you asked me yesterday about at evening time, did they go hunt their cows or what? And I never had thought about that, but our cow was always at home at night. My mother milked, night and morning. And I guess they come on their own. We never did go out hunting for everybody's cows. You found that funny, but they was all down in town, and they'd go back of those stores back there. They just ambled around, They got people, and then they passed the stock law, of course, after they decided that for a time you could still keep them if you had them. When they did pass this law, you could still keep and own a cow. Everybody that had children, needed that for their milk, butter. But then later, as people got rid of them, they just more faded out. I don't think they ever did. Well, I don't guess they could legally force people to get rid of them because their grandfather did, I guess, having those animals, like a lot of other things, when they take in property and add it to the city. My father-in-law had a barn just outside the city limits on South Hills up there, and had 2 mules, and the road in front of his house was the city limits. But when they incorporated that all and took that in, they couldn't force him to get rid. And the same with the parrot boy up at the golf course. He's got a barn up there by the golf course where I live. And they had horses there in town for their children. Well, it wasn't in town when parrots built the barn. They had the horses there for their children, but they kept them on until the kids left. Of course, the barn's still up there. But I don't think they can force somebody to take an animal, get rid of it, just because they take in the property into the city. I think that's what happened with the cows. I never had thought about that.
Well, what's interesting about it was you didn't really have a farm, you just had a city lot. What size was that lot that your house was on
We
now?
had 2 city lots that run from Ashback to Beach.
From Ash to Beach, yeah. And
Those lots were, now if memory serves me right, I think there was 50 by 150. I think it was 300 feet from city to city of block.
from street to street, from Ash Street
2
over.
lots. We was raised on 2 lots.
Yes, I drove by there yesterday to see where you lived at.
You were Carl Pierce.
Yes.
House is on Beach. My dad sold him that lot. He built that house.
So that's where the cows stayed out a lot there in that yard?
We had a little stable out on the back of the
property.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And you had chickens, and did you have hogs?
Chicken lot.
Chicken lot?
2 hogs we had every year. People had to supplement their income because there wasn't much income in those days.
Right.
But, we had a cistern, had water.
Cistern?
And people were just interested seemingly in different things. Then there wasn't TV, my first remembrance of washing was a board, an octagon soap.
Yes.
And I told my kids and they laughed at me. But the things that we did in a day back then, I don't think, they said, oh yeah, Bob, they changed it. They wasn't 20, they was more than 24 hours back then, But we walked everywhere we went. We grew everything practically that we eat. And the deal with milking cows, we milked in the morning, my mother did. We took care of the milk. We did, when I think of what a day was filled up then, of course there wasn't ball practice. They wasn't trips to Walmart. We just got up to but we ironed every piece of clothes. There wasn't wash and wear then. You washed and hung them out. You handled each piece to wash it and rinse it and take it and hang it on the line. Go back and get it and sprinkled it and ironed it. I don't think, and now we push a plug. We build fires when we start to cook a meal. I don't think we could do in a day today what we did back then in a day. I don't know what to explain.
Well, on two city lots, seems like you run a full-time farm. You're growing vegetables and had hogs and
we
chickens.
We didn't grow anything. We had it.
Yeah.
We bought our staples. My dad worked. And actually, then, we don't think a thing about going down to market today and picking up a couple of steaks, and putting them on, cook them, that's it. Well, we didn't have access to fresh stuff during the winter. Most of the stuff come bulk. I know when we bought beans, dry beans, they were in a barrel, and they had a scoop, and they'd put them up on a scale and weigh them. If you want a pound, 2 pounds, whatever you wanted. And
where did you shop at? Where did you
Commissary.
Commissary downtown?
You won't remember it. They tore it down not too long ago, except for the red light at Bowman's Jewelry, across on that corner, across the street. That was the commissary.
That was for one of the mines, a commissary for a mine?
Yeah, it was long. It was a big building. Why do you remember some things so distinctly and the rest that the sealant was tin, and it was in squares pressed, to be decorative, and it was put up in squares. And when I was a kid, that sealant fascinated me. When you stood to a counter and the things you bought was behind the counter. It wasn't help yourself. And Mom would send us with a grocery list to the commissary, and they'd fill our grocery list for it. And after times got a little better, it was pretty bad. But when things went to picking up some, the one of us that went to the store got a nickel for a pop, and we got a pop, so we couldn't wait to go to the store.
So did you have to? Did you shop there at the commissary because that's where your dad worked for that company, and you had to shop from the company commissary?
You didn't have to.
Did they pay in script? Did they pay him like?
My dad never did get script where he worked. Now some of the places, some of mine did give script, but my daddy got and today in my mother's things, there was a little about 18 inches long, 9 inches wide, just a miniature little suitcase, like a little suitcase. It had the little brass things, and the latch pin company, and that was latch pins, in the counter at the commissary, and give them that to display the latch pins in. And my mother saw it and liked it, and it was just, they said, well, yeah, they'd sell it to her when they finished selling out the latch pins. They did. And that was at home. And when my dad retired from the mines, or he had to, he got his back broke, and he died at 62, and I felt like he was an old man when he died, but he absolutely worked himself to death in the mines. But when he could work no longer and applied for his, I think when he applied for his black lung, I think it was, he had to show proof. A lot of these mines here had shut down, you know. There's Peabody and Westburn, and this mountain was full of mines that shut down because the northern coal fields, my dad said as long as he lived, that the southern fields and the northern fields should have worked under it. They needed their representation by the United Mine Workers. But these coal operators, here he's up in Pennsylvania in those mines up there, you know, when the Yablonsky killing was, you knew about the Yablonsky, well, that was connected with it. And they were going to eliminate the southern fields from the protection of the United Mine Workers, because they was just a total bill of expense on their where they set up the fund for men to draw the black lung and to draw their benefits from having worked. And but my daddy said now the old coal operators in the lower fields, the southern fields, didn't make the money. They didn't own their railroads. The big Pennsylvania companies owned their own railroads and could operate and could pay royalty on their coal in the amount the union required to keep this fund to pay these men like my daddy. And it didn't materialize. It hasn't today, but he said that the union, which he was a strong union man, but he said the union would run the coal business out of the southern fields. It did. It happened after he died, but he said they can't operate. See, Middlesboro and Harlan and all the places, this was when times picked up and the economy picked up after the Depression. This was a very flourishing place and lots of here, but it just gradually went out. But that was the thing when that Yablonsky, see, he was going to be president, and they wanted to keep the president they had with the mine workers. I don't know how I got on that, but anyway, it's one of those things that was a big in that industry.
The coal business was big at one time up into the 70s in Campbell County.
Yeah,
it's kind of slowed down, and then I don't know. A lot of machinery does a lot of the work now. They don't need quite as many
they said
people.
They come in with stripping.
Yeah.
They eliminated the deep mine.
Right.
and set up laws. That's more expense on the operation. They had to insure. My dad was in that explosion. It was at Etna up on Peabody Mountain. Of course, he was one that was fortunate and came out, but 10 men was killed in that.
It's very dangerous coal mining.
They said it was it's some kind of gas that accumulates in the mine.
Right.
I don't know from but they said it was so gaseous that if they hit a little flint of rock in the coal, their pick tool they dug it with, and a little spark he could have, and said that was. But they thought that one was from somebody, and it was getting all rules to even take any smoking material with you in the mines. And I guess a heavy smoker, that'd be next to impossible to go a day without when you're addicted to nicotine. But they thought that somebody in the mine had taken some tobacco products and lit a match to smoke when it was prohibited, but it never did. I don't know who it was, or if they even proved or not. They thought that was what set that one up, and it was a bad one.
So downtown LaFollette, back when you were younger in the 30s and 40s, it was kind of booming town. There's a lot of people back then.
It's like the Grand Central Station. You couldn't walk on the streets. People hurried to get the work done on Saturday to come home, come to town, get a parking place. Everybody parked in, what you call that, diagonal?
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't park like this. They parked down like this, and they'd park their car, and Hamburger King was going. There's hamburger. I can just smell their hot dogs today. And we had at one time 3 theaters here. You do that?
Yes. Did you get to?
Nolan Leach had one. Where
Right.
the electric company is now. Nolan Leach, he was a money-making rascal. He done everything. He had a junkyard, and he had a theater, and had a restaurant. But we done nice for him. The Capitol Theater, the Pirates owned, where it was at there, which
Yes.
Humana is, I believe, downtown. I believe that's next to Shelby's there, old
Right.
Shelby's out on Main Street. And then Cherokee, Pirates built Cherokees. It was beautiful. Oh, it was beautiful. They had big shag carpet with big, elaborate colors. You went in the lobby and they're around and walked, but had plush seats. It was way ahead of its time, but it was it. And people just didn't respect. It seems like care about it like they should. It got mishandled pretty bad. It was a beautiful theater. We was very.
Did you get to go see many movies as a kid? Did you get to go?
You had a dime.
You had a dime.
It was, yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember any movie in particular that you saw that you remember?
My brother said to me one time, he said, what happened to all of those movies that you'd go in, you'd decide you'd get tired, and you'd go in the afternoon, and they'd sing these little ditties and what, and you'd find yourself in love with this pretty little girl on the screen, and you'd come out and couldn't see for the sun, and you're humming these little ditties. I said, now you hear them screaming at one another. What he said, I wish they'd bring those back, don't you? I said, yeah, but they're gone too, Kurt. Everything's gone.
Things has changed a little bit over time.
So much. But now Saturday they had westerns, and they continued them. They'd have this big hero of it just ready to go off that bluff. No way out, no way back, no way, but that was it. And to be continued. Couldn't wait to get back on Saturday. This old woman, they had those on TV back then when TV was young,
You remember when you first got a TV?
Oh, well, you see, I was living in Michigan when we got our first TV. They didn't have it here.
Okay,
Yeah.
So you moved to Michigan. Seems like people up north had a little bit more stuff like that. They made a little bit more money,
That's
didn't
a
they?
little ahead of us. They had more money. But you may or may not know, have you noticed the street in LaFollette? Then you take Clinton and Lake City and the smaller towns between here and Knoxville. There are 2 lanes barely 2 lanes. I know
Yes.
when they put up parking meters in Lake City, they had such a political powwow about it. They put up parking meters, but they couldn't park on both sides of the street. It kept you couldn't pass between 2 parked and then 2 to meet. And they changed it. 1 week you could park on this side, 1 week you could park on this side. You might remember that. But you see LaFollette, how wide it is. We've got 4 lanes besides our parking places. LaFollette, I understand when was laid out when Coke came here.
The Coke ovens, yeah.
Yeah,
The
you know where
mining.
they set up here. My daddy worked, he went in the ore mines when he was 13 years old. That was what he worked for. And he'd been there a long time, but there was the old tram road was around there, old but Julie Beard's, but we called it the Holler Road. It's the road you go up to the nursing home now, the hospital.
Yes.
That road, well, you go right up there, and you just go up the mountain. I think there's houses there now, but you went around the road that goes around now by the East End School, or
Yes.
LaFollette School, they go east to west. But Aunt Judy Beard lived there. She lived there, but going around her house, there was the old signs of the old tram road that went around there and got ore. Yeah, I think these mountains are still full of minerals of all types, don't you? We've got coal and stuff in this, but now when I was little, and we went to church over where, you know where Kentucky goes down by the old skating rink? Your Kentucky,
Yes,
Walker's store,
Right.
that Kentucky, and goes out there on the curve, and you go that way up to Pleasant Ridge,
Mm-hmm.
and you turn back this way, you come by Hudson's store,
Yes,
back over, okay, and then over there's that Project and what. Well, now our church was right there on the corner, right on that corner of Kentucky and the road that goes to Pleasant Ridge. And off down there in that bottom where that lower section of houses is with the Housing Authority was still the remains of the old furnace when it was working.
Oh, yeah.
And then right, I think we was right here on the corner right there, it was the little tool house had been, and Frank Bowman lived in it. They lived in it as a dwelling, the little was their thing. And then the coke ovens, Carlton Mars got one of those big doors off of one up at his farm up the valley. It's off the coke oven.
Oh, okay.
That spring's still up there, ain't it, at the coke oven spring?
I think
Have
so,
you-
yeah.
that's
Yeah, I've
the-
been to those before, to the Coke ovens
We
and seen them.
used to, when we first got water here.
Now, you didn't have city water as a kid, and growing up, you had to have a...
When we got it, it come out of KY Holler.
Okay.
And in the summertime, ain't you been at the lake when it was dry and what that odor you get from the stagnant water is what it is, that stagnant water odor. You could turn on the faucet, and we had a faucet out in the yard. We hadn't got it in the house, nobody, but it was in the yard. We did have city water. We had some families that come to our house and got water, and but it was bad. We could use it for washing and scrubbing and cleaning, but you couldn't drink it. It was bad, and we would take jars and go up to the tank spring up there. Right up here.
Yes,
Oh, it was good water. I want to go, and I'm going to. I told my grandkids about it. They said, Grammy, will you take us up there and show us where it's at? It's beside the road up there. Go up there. People still goes there and gets water. But I'm going to go up there and get me some water. It's better than anything you buy in these bottles. It's good water.
Well, I'm going to let you get back to work and maybe come back and see you another day.
Well, you come and see me. Just any time.
I think I wanted to come film you here at work and let people see you. I think be a real inspiration to some people to see you at your age still coming into work every day.
You know, Rhonda Longmire, she's one of my dear friends. You know Rhonda down at the bank.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She said, Frankie, you are my inspiration. You are my idol. I said, oh, honey, please. She said, But I said, I can't imagine nobody. When I'm at home, when it, now on Saturday, I've got things on Sunday I do. I go to church. I got the thing. Well, you got something to do every day when you work. I'm always raised, but when you work, you got to do it when you're allotted for that thing to do. But I said, when I'm at home now, I'm not a Betty Crocker. No, I always rather buy my peas in the can as to grow them. My hand don't fit no whole handle. I don't enjoy that garden and all that stuff people talks about. But I like to be at home in the evening when I'm tired and get me a glass of tea and stretch out. And
do you watch much TV? You watch any TV programs?
That's the biggest waste of time of anything that was ever. Now I watched Judge Judy.
Oh yeah, let's look right here. You got an autographed picture of her up here.
It's autographed, yeah.
Yeah.
And now she's like me. She's got old, and she's a little smart aleck. I appreciate her because she says so many people today is saying what you want to hear. Don't matter. Next person comes on wants to hear something else. They'll tell them something else. And Judge Judy looked them right in the eye and tell them, you're supposed to do the right thing and tell the truth. And this little girl was on her show one day. She said, who supports you? She said, I support myself. She said, where do you work? I said, I don't work. I'm a stay-at-home mother. She said, how do you support yourself if you don't work? She said, I get a subsistence check. Well, she said, you don't support yourself. Me and Bert support you. So, I appreciate her for that. But then I don't appreciate when somebody's sitting on there on a seat and she looks them in the eye and calls them a fool or something. They've not opened their mouth. That's not good. So I like her for that. But outside of that, I watch Judge Judy. My kids don't call me at night in Judge Judy's 30 minutes that she's got. But outside of that, no, this filth and stuff that they've got on TV, and back they wouldn't have thought about allowing some. I know midday merry-go-round. You heard the midday merry-go-round in Knoxville, on Gay Street. Most of the big stars in Nashville starting to midday with the Laurel Blanchard. They used to come down here at the clubhouse. They called it the clubhouse. Heck's Bargain Barn.
Yes,
The miners built that. The mining company sure kind of built that for the miners. And it was a public building. These men come and J. Basil Mull come here and held a revival in it, back. And the entertainers, midday merry-go-round, come Saturday nights down there. And anything they wanted to have. 4th of July was a big day there. They had a pool behind it when it was first built for Murray's store. I think that church there bought that for a fellowship hall. But Murray's built that for a store, for a grocery store. But right where it sits, right behind there, was a pool, and some miner's child drowned in it. It hadn't been there long, but they closed it up when it was built. But that was the clubhouse. When did I start telling you about the clubhouse?
Well,
I don't know.
We were talking about several different things.
I don't know.
Well, one of the things I remember yesterday was talking about. You said you don't use a cell phone or computer at home. You don't have internet. And you never did get it.
No, I never had one.
I see. It looks like you use a computer here at work. I see one right here. I guess
I barely know enough to look up a customer.
You look them up every now and then. So.
If it's anything beyond that, these girls they're absolute geniuses. They can turn one wrong side out, but not me. No, they went off and left me a long time ago, and they put up with me and my ignorance.
Well, I'm gonna get a little shot here. I'm gonna let people see all these pictures. You got, you got pictures all in your office. People that sent you over.
Oh, my goodness sakes!
I guess some of this is family and grandkids and great grandkids and.
My daughter-in-law's sister was coming up to my house and had her little grandson with her. And he said, where are we going? She said, we're going up to John's Grammy's house. Said, is she my Grammy? And said, well, no, she's John's Grammy. Said, would she be my Grammy? And she said, well, ask her when you get there. If she'll be your Grammy, to come. And he said, I said, well, of course I'll be your Grammy. And a few days later, that was his grandmother had him. And his mother went in his room, and he was putting little stickers up on the walls. And she said, what in the world are you doing? He said, I'm fixing my room like Grammys.
Well, Frankie, we'll see you next time. You have a great day.
Sweetheart. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for the interview.
Thanks for coming.